We're live.
Testing.
We're recording right now.
You're
The
introducing
Cold
it.
War.
All right. The one. Harry Truman. The Cold War began with Truman in power, and he was well known for his policy of containing communism in an effort to stop it, which became known as containment. The Truman Doctrine also set the nation on a path of supporting other countries and groups that were against communism, and it led to a few wars as well.
What
The
wars?
only good communist is a dead one, as you can see there.
Red China. In 1949, China became a communist-ruled country, ruled by Mao Zedong, and they are one of the biggest powers in the world with one of the largest populations. So them becoming communist was a big deal, and Americans were scared because 1949 was also the year that Russia dropped their first nuke. Also, some nice China on here.
Alabama. It was in the 1930s. Huntsville, Alabama was seen as a small community with a large production of cotton. During World War II, the U.S. needed a site for chemical munitions. Congressman John J. Sparkman from Tennessee advocated the use of Alabama for a chemical munitions site. It's still in use to this day. And look at that guy. That's a fat hick.
Sputnik started the space race by the Soviets. They launched it, and we all got a little spooked, and then we started trying to launch our own rockets. And it's one of the few turning points of the Cold War. The Americans put down their burgers for the first time in years and looked up to the skies. I'm getting a call right now. I'll ignore that. The Americans shocked that communists could launch a satellite because they thought they were all dope heads before.
Crocodile heads.
Yeah, they thought they were all kind of stupid. And the U.S. wanted revenge. And Russia also launched them first man into space.
Alleged. Well, we launched it.
It was also important to the Cold War because it was a turning point.
Yep. Joseph Stalin was the mastermind behind the Soviets. He was the communist leader from the mid-1920s to 1953. He forced rapid industrialization and collectivization of agriculture, which was it caused a lot of poverty and resulted in the loss of life of a lot of people. Russia was the main communist target of the U.S., and it, along with the U.S., built up a large nuclear arsenal.
Fidel Castro was the main man in Cuba, and he was behind the Cuban Missile Crisis when that occurred. And he was a communist leader who held a revolution in Cuba. And with the support of the communists in Russia, he got many nukes in his country that were aimed directly at America, which JFK, the president at the time, did not like.
Not Seattle.
Yeah, Seattle could not get hit. So, all that stuff is safe.
The communist bloc, it was the... dude, put that beer away.
The communist bloc is a central Eastern Europe, and it's a group of communist states. It opposed capitalism, and it was in the USSR. It also was the border from the. It was also a border to the Iron Curtain, and obviously you can see here some communist blocs.
Ho Chi Minh was a Vietnamese communist leader. During this period, he was the driving force for the communist revolution in Vietnam, which led to the revolution of communism in Vietnam, led to the Vietnam War. JFK blown away. Pretty self-explanatory. We gotta restart the whole thing.
Nope, staying as is. He was the 35th president. And
all right. It was from 1961 to 1963 when he was assassinated. He was seen as a voice for young Americans, and because of that, he represented the new generation. And his response to communism was known as the flexible response, and it involved less aggressive dialect towards the Russians. And he did promise man on the moon by the end of the 60s. And I guess, in hindsight, we learned our lesson of not transporting the president in a convertible.
Khrushchev was the Soviet leader. from 1953 after Stalin died till 1964 when the second leader took over. And he was in later in his career, he was seen more as like a change, but Russia didn't really want that, so that they kicked him out of the leadership. And he wanted to get rid of most of Stalin's policies and look forward. And he was looking for peaceful coexistence and not really trying to get the wars and stuff. He was looking more towards a peaceful world.
And finally, the Suez Crisis, which took place in Egypt. And it was where Egypt attempted to take over the Suez Canal to the Soviet support. It's a main example of brinkmanship with the U.S. and the USSR close to launching the nukes at each other.
And Europe.
Yeah, and
Here are our citations to prove that we didn't steal anything.
Yep.
We also have someone here if you would like to have an interview. He knows some stuff about the Cold War.
Lane, what is your opinion about the Cold War? How did it change the world?
It did.
Bullshit.
Oh, yeah, that's